This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about.
Last year, the bill that ended the government shutdown also closed the 2018-era loophole that resulted in a booming market of hemp-derived THC products here in Wisconsin, where, mind you, cannabis is still illegal at the state level. So where do we go from here? I'm executive producer Haley Sperling, sitting in for your host Bianca Martin, and joining me to talk about what all of this means for local producers and retailers and consumers is Philip Scott, president and founder of the Wisconsin Hemp Farmers and Manufacturers Association, and the owner of Crone Apothecary over on the north side. Philip, welcome back to CityCast Madison.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for having me again to hopefully inform the community.
I hope so. I know there was this big news brewing, and immediately we're like, well, let's talk to Philip again. So let's start with the national picture. So, as I sort of just laid out, one piece of the November 2025 federal spending bill kind of sneakily put in a ban on nearly all hemp-derived consumer products. So we're talking vapes, gummies, drinks, etc., all of these things that are kind of seemingly everywhere these days. And that ban is set to take effect in November 2026, so not right away. But according to CNBC, this could end a roughly $28 billion industry, and that's nationally. And so I'm really curious to get your perspective. Did this ban come as a surprise to you and the folks that you know in the hemp industry?
Oh, it did. It kind of came out of left field. It just surprised all of us. I don't think anybody really saw this coming to a full-scale ban. Now, we know the government, they do stuff to our industry, it seems like on the daily basis. So we knew that something may be coming down the pike to put our industry kind of in check and that type of thing, but we just didn't expect it to come this quickly.
Yeah. And it was really interesting to me, too, because it seemed like this was really pushed forward by Mitch McConnell, but it's not necessarily split along party lines. It's been very divisive. Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul called this ban, quote, the most thoughtless, ignorant proposal to an industry that I've seen in a long, long time. So this is like clearly striking a nerve with people across the board.
Yeah, it's a tough one out there. I mean, especially in Wisconsin, we estimate that it's about $1 billion market in Wisconsin alone. And when we probably employ between 3,700 to 4,000 individuals across this state.
Wow. So that really does help us set the scene here. So let's dig into Wisconsin. Like, how are local retailers and growers responding to this ban?
It's kind of all negative, actually. Everybody's shocked. Took a few days to get past, okay, what is this? Now we've taken time to break down and acknowledge, okay, this is what this means. The industry itself is really worried about being shut down across the board in Wisconsin. And how do these individuals, when I say 4,000 jobs, like I started with, how do those individuals wake up every day and go to work knowing that in less than a year, everything they've put their life into could be gone? And how do you provide for your family? How do you wake up every day, say, I can still go to my job and do what I do? And it's a scary world out there with what's been done to us as an industry. And the retailers are getting organized. The farmers are getting organized. The manufacturers, the processors are getting organized. And we're all coming together to hopefully show that we're unified to try and make a stand and draw a line in the sand to give us that opportunity to keep thriving.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a key through line here is really just uncertainty for a lot of folks. And also, though, action. People are sort of stepping up and ready to make some changes or ready to lobby, would you say?
We call it advocacy in our realm because we're not really registered lobbyists, but it's coming together. I mean, you look at what's happening at the federal level, you have major groups that are trying to organize hemp farmers and our whole industry as a whole to make a national push to ask for an 18-month extension to the current proposal language that got passed to put us out of business. And then on the state side of stuff, we've really gotten organized as an industry, and we've gone to the legislature, and they are listening to us finally and asked, can we put something in place to potentially draw a line or a circle around Wisconsin that we protect our own industry from inside out? And we've asked the governor and we've asked the attorney general, if we do this, will you guys stand your ground? And obviously they haven't given us a clear answer of how they feel. But on our end, we're very hopeful that we can get something pushed through at the state level to give us a leg to stand on and tell the federal government, you can take your stuff and head over there because we'll be good here in Wisconsin. So that's kind of where we're at right now, trying to figure out what makes sense. Can we get stuff done before the legislature closes? I always tell people we live in a purple state. Wisconsin's legislature is supposed to operate for 2 full years, and they're probably going to close in March, about 15 months into their session. And if we don't have something in the books to allow our farming side of this, the agriculture piece, because most of us have to plant, middle of April, do our hemp farmers and the people that, make the raw material, are they going to be able to make that investment this spring and plant?
Yeah, so it is, again, a lot of uncertainty in an industry that needs a lot of planning. Again, we're talking about agriculture here. It's not just picking up and planting a seed and hoping it grows tomorrow. This stuff takes months and months of planning. And, with this too, I want to turn a little bit to what's going on at the state level, because as you mentioned, there is some movement going on. There are at least a couple of bills that were introduced last month that I want to note. And one is actually bipartisan because, like I said, this is a really interesting, weird issue that really crosses party lines. And it's a bill to regulate intoxicating hemp products that Wisconsinites have become very familiar with seeing in stores. It would enforce an age restriction for purchasing and require products to be sold in child-safe containers. It would also require hemp growers to get their crops tested by independent labs. Do you think this bill is a good solution?
I do. So you got 2 bills moving through the legislature right now. The one you speak of, I believe, is AB 747 or SB 682, and that's Senator Testin and Representative Kurtz co-authored bill. That is common sense legislation that could help our industry keep wanting to make their investments in the local economy. And we are strongly behind that language. At the end of the day, if the consumers aren't feeling safe and we aren't doing our job to protect the community, it's tough for the consumers to want to keep spending money in our community. So on our end, that's the type of language that we support and get behind. Now, there is a second bill that was introduced as well, and that's AB 606 and SB 681. We call it the 3-tier bill. They want to take our hemp industry and mold it into the big alcohol type frame. And we just don't know if that's language that we support and can get behind. And it's just very tricky because, like the national stuff, it seems like it's big alcohol versus hemp and cannabis. And now in the state of Wisconsin, they've brought that fight to our local legislature to make our legislature choose big alcohol, roll everything in there because we can safeguard it, even though I don't agree with that. So it's a tough one because it seems like we brought the national fight to Wisconsin and now the legislature, some of them want to go this way, some of them want to go this way. And how do we figure out a compromise so our industry wins and the consumers that we provide these daily cannabinoids to feel like they win and also get the benefits that they receive from using our material?
And I mean, one thing I should note too is that, with this federal ban impending, it leaves the regulations up to states to go in and say what they want to do with hemp. And so I'm curious to kind of get your take here too. Like, do you think what happens in Wisconsin will sort of be a litmus test for the country at large? Or is Wisconsin, as you said, we're a purple state, we could go really either way, that will just kind of be like one state down and there will be 49 other opinions in the room as well?
I think Wisconsin has the opportunity to lay this out right and give the federal government a good baseline to be able to at least look at our industry and go, okay, we like what Wisconsin's doing over there. Maybe that's how we should approach this at the federal level. The feds, they're always going to watch programs that are out there and happening. I think Wisconsin could set the national standard if we do it appropriately. But, I live here, I grow here, I sell here. So my opinion could be skewed.
I'm curious again to dig into that second bill that you mentioned, that 3-tier sort of system that you laid out. And then this bill basically would regulate products similarly to alcohol, as you mentioned. So liquor stores, bars, and restaurants would be able to sell these THC products without additional licensing. It also comes with more permits and taxes for the hemp industry. So why is it that, you and your organization are not fully behind this one? Like what is it that is holding you guys back?
Well, it's the taxes is the big piece. And realistically, the 3-tier system, it's been around for, I don't know, I think 100 years. And realistically, I don't know if that system is the appropriate system to oversee our industry, because in the 3-tier system, it doesn't handle agriculture. And that's the part that confuses me, the big piece of it. And realistically, right now, I am able to go seed to shelf. If I put a seed in the ground, I harvest that crop, I dry that crop, I process that crop, I put it into final material to sell to the consumer, and I am able to do all that under one roof. And the 3-tier system, it's going to force me to potentially open a new LLC and have to figure out how to handle distribution and that type of thing, as well as the tax rate that they've proposed. When you break that down, I think it's almost 5 cents per milliliter and almost $50 per ounce flower sold. That is ridiculous when you look at the liquor and the alcohol industry in our state having some of the lowest taxes in the country. So if one intoxication can be low, why does the other intoxication need to be so high to collect that revenue? And really, who's benefiting off of that?
Yeah, that is an interesting way of putting it. I'm curious, has the Tavern League sounded off on this one? Are they coming into play in these conversations here?
They've been pretty vocal. It's not just the Tavern League, though. People have to realize, like, you have the Tavern League, you have the beer and liquor distributors, you have the wine and spirit distributors. It's a big collective of different little pieces that are coming together and saying, well, 3 tiers is probably the best way so we can control it. It's scary to us to see and hear that, because right now, if I approached a big distributor and said, hey, will you carry my product? Sure. We'll do that. Cool. And we work out an agreement. I wholesale them. They distribute. Cool. They get my product on shelves. But when you break it down like alcohol, that might be a good relationship for a couple months to a year. But once the numbers and the quotas and the shelf spaces get involved with how they control it and send product to market, it's going to make it pretty complicated for the average farmer, hemp farmer in the state of Wisconsin, to be able to find a home and a distribution channel to put their products. That 3-tier bill, they want to take away being able to direct ship to consumer. So when I say that, farm, retail, wholesale can no longer, you put your order in, I package it, direct ship it to your doorstep. Big alcohol believes if we can't do that with alcohol, why are you guys allowed to do that with cannabis today?
It feels like I hate to pit two queens against each other. Wisconsin loves its alcohol. And I mean, the numbers really don't lie, right? People are drinking less and they are partaking in these cannabis products more and more. So it seems like we should be able to come together on something here, right?
Yes. And especially when you look at the alcohol sales in the last 10 years, this is going to be the lowest sales that they've had across the board. And right now, a lot of these distributors and liquor stores and restaurants are starting to carry, my hemp products on their shelf space. So we know that they see the value of what we bring because we're making up the margins that they're losing on the booze.
Yeah, I know even one locally famous brewery, Untitled Art, they have been dipping their toes into the cannabis space. There are a lot of, drinkables out there that people really do like. And I know for a fact, too, some of my sober friends, like they prefer to go out and drink those THC beverages and not have to worry about like that temptation of alcohol and can still, feel like they're part of the party when they're out and can have those drinks. I want to pivot back to regulation a little bit because it feels like proponents of legalization of cannabis products have been like pretty much begging for regulation for years. Like this is not something that advocates are fighting tooth and nail against. And in fact, as I mentioned, this is not even the first time we've had you on the show to talk about it. So do you think that these bills, whether we support them or not, like, do you think that these bills signify that we might actually be ready to make moves towards regulation, that we're ready to walk the walk and talk the talk?
I do. It's tough in Wisconsin. Like I said, the way that our legislature opens up every year, and it's only a 2-year session. So it's really a short window to try to move products, as well as when you look at it, we have an election cycle this fall, and
Oh, yeah.
it makes it very complicated because these bills will save our industry. It makes sense to put those standards and those things in place so everybody from farmer to consumer is happy. But realistically, until we know who the next governor and attorney general is, it's a very tricky situation because we might not have legal cannabis, as we like to call it, whether it's a medical bill or a full recreational bill until 2027. And it's tough because if our legislature stayed open until the fall, like they're supposed to do, we potentially could have something on the books by this fall. The Senate majority, or Senator LeMahieu of the majority of the Senate, he came out and said cannabis and hemp are top priorities for the spring to get figured out before we close session. So finally having a little more support from the top brass keeps us hopeful.
Yeah. And I mean, did this federal move and this November 2026 deadline sort of light that fire on both the legislative and the advocacy side?
Yes, it did. So before, it was easy for the lobbyists to go run around the Capitol and say, well, this industry is the Wild West and it's not organized, and these farmers can't talk to the consumers, and the processors don't work with the manufacturers, and blah, 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 telling all the stories out there in the world. This federal ban announcement actually was the first time in 8 years that we were able to go up to the Capitol and have conversations with bipartisan individuals on both sides of the aisle and show them that we're actually unified. And it's impressive that it took 8 years and a federal ban for the whole industry to go, oh, we better figure out a way to mesh ourselves together so we can stand our ground.
So does it feel like lawmakers are finally, more or less paying attention now and they want to take action?
I think so. Like Senator Paul said out of Kentucky, how am I supposed to tell my grandma next door, like, hey, you can't take that gummy?
I want to throw a wrench into this whole situation that we were talking about here, because earlier in December, President Donald Trump actually rescheduled cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act from a Schedule I category, which is the same category as heroin and LSD, to a Schedule III, which at the very least opens the door for research opportunity with cannabis. He also hailed cannabis as, potentially huge for senior citizens in particular. So how, if at all, will this rescheduling impact the fight for legalization and regulation?
Well, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky question. But moving from Schedule I to Schedule III is awesome. I really wish we would have went from Schedule I to Schedule V and just been done with it. But I understand how government works, and it's going to take time, money, research. It does open up the door, like you said, for the universities to start receiving money from the federal government to take a deeper dive into this so we can get the validation and the numbers and the things like that we need for the legislatures around the country to feel more comfortable and moving forward with things. But the tricky part is what he did, it actually helped our industry when people take a step back and think about it, because at the end of the day, him moving it from 1 to 3, all it did was validate our whole industry that's been questioned for so long. And when I say that, especially in Wisconsin with our current hemp industry, I mean, it validated CBD, CPG, CBN, THC, THCA, some people say Delta 9, that type thing, but it validated the actual cannabinoids that are grown from the plant. And that is huge. I take that as a huge win because I've been questioned every day I've operated for 8 years of, is this good product? Is this bad product? Are you poisoning our communities? And it finally removes that narrative.
So you feel like it adds some legitimacy to your business?
Yes, 100%.
That's huge. I feel like, the resounding thing that I have seen overall from advocates and legalization advocates is that this rescheduling move is a good one. they wish it went farther. They wish that it was, completely taken off and that, reparations can be made and people can have their rights restored if they have any sort of, criminal history that involves cannabis that would be, now legal under these moves. But it seems like you're saying one step at a time, that at least one step in the right direction is a good step.
Yes, but it does scare me. I got to be honest with you, because it hands the keys over to the FDA. And I really hope the FDA doesn't use this opportunity to put all of us small hemp farmers and cannabis farmers around the country out of business. Because anytime you get them involved, it gets more expensive. So many more restrictions come in place. And I hope this isn't reversing that opportunity where we wanted to go in the future is to full recreational and doesn't just lock us into a medicinal program.
Yeah, because I do remember too, back in 2025, there was attempts at the state level to legalize cannabis in a weird way where it would be like there would be a state-run dispensary, and it just felt like, okay, we got legalization, but at what cost? I mean, ultimately that didn't go through, but like it's stuff like that you're kind of afraid of.
Yes, exactly. Because it just opens up the door for MSOs, multi-state operators with millions and billions of dollars of venture capital money behind them to be able to potentially come in and take everything from our industry that we've spent the last 8 years trying to build appropriately.
Yeah. Well, other than waiting on state lawmakers to make their move or not, like what is next for the cannabis industry and its advocates?
Well, that changes on a daily basis. But as we sit right now, we have the federal ban, as you know, coming up in less than a year. We have state stuff put in place that we're trying to advocate for to get pushed through for before March. We know that we have to watch the Attorney General and the governor's race this fall, because if we get something put in place to protect our current industry, we're going to have to lean on those two individuals to secure and protect us. But at the same time, depending on which party wins those two seats, are we going to be able to move forward with the medicinal and a full recreational program in the future? I don't know, because of the politics, the way that it's laid out. If we get the wrong governor in place this next election cycle, you could be looking at another 4 years before you even see any type of movement anywhere. And realistically, if we do go to a medicinal route, it can't be over restrictive. Because right now you have people in their minds, you have to choose between medicine and doing something else. And it's a tricky situation.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot for us to be watching as this year progresses. I'm really excited, hopefully, to see what comes next.
I always tell people, we've been asking for 8 years for common sense legislation to allow us to just keep investing in our communities and give back to the consumers that need our product. And it is a scary environment, but it's not all end to be end. There is time to make these adjustments, especially at the federal stuff outside of the state. Every 90 days they sign a new CR or a new federal budget, as well as we have an ag committee that needs to work on a new farm bill to potentially be signed in the near future. And that farm bill could give us, 5 to 7 years of guidance without another hiccup, hopefully. So there is opportunity. We are very optimistic that somewhere at the federal level or at the state level, we'll get something in place to allow us just to keep operating. And most people need to realize, we're a $1 billion industry, right? Cool. Well, the hemp and cannabis consumers in the state of Wisconsin, they really control about 600 to 637,000 votes. We did a big poll and we started asking people that question, and that's a lot of votes in a purple state that could swing another way. So hopefully we'll figure it out.
What a great place for us to end on. We will figure it out. We will probably be having you back on the show later this year to talk us through it as we figure it out. Philip, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
That's Philip Scott, president and founder of the Wisconsin Hemp Farmers and Manufacturers Association and owner of Crone Apothecary. And that's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm executive producer Haley Sperling, sitting in for your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor. Just head to membership.citycast.fm. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with someone who wants to pass legislation? Help us spread the word about CityCast. Tell your friends. We'll be back here tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care and thanks for listening.